Travis, you can stop your video until you go on.
Estamos esperando. Bienvenido a todos. Estamos esperando que los participantes ingresen a la sala. En unos segundos.
Welcome everybody. We are going to start in a few seconds.
Bienvenido a todos. Estamos iniciando nuestro segundo día.
Welcome everybody. We are here in our second day. The future of work for Latins in the global scenery. This is opening new possibilities for everyone. We have now interpretation, which is simultaneous into Spanish and English. So if you want to hear this in your own language, at the bottom part of Zoom, you can see a button that says interpretation there. You can select the language that you would like to hear. Jose, could we start with our program today? Welcome.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the Future of Work for Latins conference by Dream to Succeed. This is where great Latin leaders, professionals, and students meet collaborative leadership development, smart technologies, growth, and culture. My name is Jose Perez. I'm the CEO of Global Excellence and Innovation, and I am honored to be your host for this two-day event focused on professional development for Latins around the globe. As said before, this event is being translated simultaneously to English and Spanish. Select your preferred language in the interpretation icon at the bottom of our screen. A little bit about myself. Many of you know me. I am the CEO of Global Excellence and Innovation today, but in my own journey as a Latin professional, I was born in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, to a family with very, very limited means. My dad was a flower grower. My mom was a third grade education. You know, we had a loving family, but very hard life growing up, like many of us around the world had. Now, I have been fortunate to have access to education, to a wonderful network over time, and great institutions and individuals who help elevate me and my career through the years. My background is in engineering, physics, and investment banking. Started my career at Sony as a technology developer and move on to work in wonderful organizations leading excellence and innovation for ASML in the semiconductor industry, for Nestle in the food industry, and then later on in the energy industry for Black & Veatch and Denver and Marathon Petroleum. Today, I work across all industries from successful startups to about 50% of the Fortune 50 organizations, helping them develop a culture of excellence, innovation, and collaboration. So I feel very privileged and honored to be part of this community and giving back to you with the insights of great cross-industry leaders and organizations who are willing to share and learn with you and hopefully help you on this journey. So yesterday we had a wonderful, exciting day, and today we have a wonderful presentations set up for all of us to enjoy. Now, first, let's take care of some housekeeping items, making sure that you know how to communicate with us. Every one of you has joined the session on listen-only mode, which means that you're muted and we cannot hear or see you, but you can communicate with us directly by using the Q&A option in the Zoom interface. So make sure you hover over your Zoom interface, that you find the Q&A option at the bottom of the screen and use that option liberally. What I mean by that is that during each one of these presentations, and they usually last anywhere between 30 and 40 minutes, you can be listening to the presenter, but also be thinking about what questions do I have for this presenter or for this panel when the live Q&A comes up. Because what we do is that we review every single question that you submit in the Q&A. Ask questions that are most meaningful and impactful for your own context, okay? Don't be shy. It doesn't matter if you're just a student and starting your journey or if you're a seasoned professional. Ask the questions that are most important to you in your own context, because this is your chance to get direct feedback and direct insight from these wonderful leaders and organizations. So make sure you use that. This is not the time to be shy. So submit as many questions as you want during the presentation. And after the presentation is done, we're going to have a 10-minute live Q&A. And in that live Q&A, I will be providing the panelists or the speakers. I'll pass it on your questions. We may not answer every single question live, but we'll provide an answer to every single question, either live or offline. And some of the questions will be selected and some of the themes will be selected to be conveyed to the speakers and to the panelists. So make sure that you take advantage of that, because this is how you get the most value out of these sessions. Now, yesterday we had wonderful presentations by cross-industry leaders and organizations, and today will be no different. We will start with changing the game at Silicon Valley with Travis Heller. Then we're going to go into a panel with smart cities and emerging global jobs and industry adoption of emerging technologies. And then we're going to move on to the future of work in cybersecurity. We're going to have a cybersecurity expert talking to us, and then the future of work with artificial intelligence and robotic process automation to wrap up the day. All of that, of course, with a specific Latin flavor and focus on the needs and the cultural aspects of development for Latin professionals from around the globe. So we're very excited to be here. Now, one more thing that we're very excited about is that we are providing real support through scholarships through hundreds of professionals and students around the world. And I want to bring Anna here to share some of the scholarships we're going to be sharing today. So Anna, take it on from here, please.
Thank you, Jose. So welcome, everybody. And for those of you who were with us yesterday, you heard that we awarded 10 mentoring scholarships with our very own CEO, Sarah Nunez. We also did a raffle to provide 10 additional scholarships for EDX, which I am going to announce the winners momentarily. But we also announced yesterday a partnership with Nicaragua Creativa, with Moonpreneur and Dream to Succeed, where 100 scholarships are going to be distributed in Nicaragua for students for entrepreneurship. So don't go away. We're going to have more scholarships today, but without further ado, let me reveal the winners of yesterday's EDX scholarships. So here are the 10 names. If your name is here, you will be receiving an email from us letting you know about the option that you have won here. Remember, this particular scholarship does have some geographical requirements. You must be in the US, Europe, or Australia. So if you meet those requirements and your name is here, congratulations. If you haven't heard from us and you're on this list, don't be shy, contact us by November 3rd, and we'll make sure that we get all the details for you. Thanks, Jose, back to you.
Fantastic, Anna. Thank you. Thank you. And thanks for all the sponsors who have made the scholarships available to our community globally. So we're very, very grateful for that. And stay tuned for more opportunities that are going to come up during this broadcast. Now, I am very, very excited about our next speaker. He is a global change leader, but also a personal friend. And I'm very honored to introduce him today. Travis Heller is an expert in change management, organizational effectiveness, business transformation, and digital transformation with more than 12 years of experience helping Fortune 100 companies from various industries and across the globe to go through large strategic changes. In the roles he has held, Travis has had the privilege of working with more than 100 companies around the world, including 40% of the Fortune 100 list. Travis brings his expertise to Google as a global change and transformation lead and as the founder of the Neurological Nomad, an organization whose mission it is to bring neuroscience, neuropsychology, and psychology to today's business leaders in order to better understand their employees and future-proof their companies. It's with great pleasure that I'd like to introduce you to our keynote speaker, Travis Heller.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Jose, for that amazing introduction. I appreciate it. It is a pleasure to be with you all today. I am absolutely over the moon to be joining this conference and to talk with all of you about something that I think Jose hit the point on that I am incredibly passionate about. So I'm excited to bring that to you. I'm going to share my screen here, so just give me 1 second. All right, perfect. Well, as Jose said, my name is Travis Haler, and in my day job, I am a change and transformation lead at Google, and I do global transformations, but I'm also the founder of my own company, the Neurological Nomad. And just a little bit about the work that I do. I've been in this space for 12 years. I focus on large-scale transformations, whether that's process, systems, culture, behavior. All of those things are in my focus areas. Academically, I hold a degree in psychology, an MBA, and have spent a lot of time studying neuroscience and neuropsychology at Harvard, and the better part of a year studying neurological research at Aalborg University in Denmark. I also have a number of specializations that I won't bore you with, but basically I can sum it up to say I'm really passionate about this topic, and I really spend a lot of time advancing my knowledge of it and hopefully bringing that to audiences around the world. I have spent my career helping people to change, and all of you, regardless of what stage in your career you're in, are going to be asked to adopt a change at some point. And actually 85% of executives today say that they will make sweeping changes within their companies within the next 2 years. So I can guarantee every one of you is going to be asked to change, but at some point, especially in the near future. So this moment of being asked to change can be a defining moment for you in your trajectory of your career, or it can be a non-defining moment. And that's because early adopters of change in organizations are seen as advocates for their leaders and often are given increased responsibilities and opportunities and are looked at as early leaders in their organizations. The unfortunate truth is that many are unprepared to take on changes when they're presented, and they miss out on that opportunity to shine. So we're going to talk about change and how you can be prepared for change when it happens. And to do this, we're going to talk about neuroscience and neuropsychology, because adopting change starts in how we as humans are built. And for the most part, neuroscientists have discovered and documented many of the barriers that we're going to face when we are asked to adopt changes. And we can use this to our advantage. We can use neuroscience to our advantage to become change superstars. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to start by understanding what we go through when we're asked to change. And in order to do that, we're going to spend some time diving into our brains and why change is difficult for us as a human. And then once we understand why it's hard for us to change, I want to share with you the ways that we can use this knowledge to become those change superstars, and end with some tactical ways that you can use it. And finally, I want to leave a lot of time for questions. I know that change is something that most people on this live stream are probably dealing with, either right now or just got done dealing with, or are looking to the future that they're going to have to deal with. So I want to make sure that you have lots of time for questions. And when I say ask questions, any questions are welcome, and everything is on the table. So please don't be shy. Please ask your questions. So with that, we're going to start our conversation with the brain, and more specifically, neuroscience and neuropsychology. And I start here because most people don't understand the impact their brain has on resisting changes. So we have to understand what we're up against. And that starts with this question that's on the screen right now. Why do people resist change? And after working with over 100 companies doing change, transformation, and culture work, I've asked that question a lot. And oftentimes what I get is one of 3 themes of answers from people or executives. And they fit into these 3 themes. The first is that our people are really comfortable and they don't want to do any more work. The second is if we ask them to change, they'll either do it or they'll make the choice to leave. And the third is that the new solution is so great, right? It's so simple or so easy. Why wouldn't they want to change? The problem with all of these is that they're 100% wrong. And the reason that they're 100% wrong is actually just one single word, and that word is choice. By saying any of those statements, we're saying that a person is choosing not to change when change is brought to them. When in reality, it isn't true. Choice is not a part of this. Actually, I'm here to tell you that humans don't have a choice in resisting changes. We all resist changes. And natural resistance is hard-coded into the very essence of who we are and how our brains work. And it's not a choice, it's actually a reaction. So if you let that kind of sink in, your brain's natural reaction to being told to change is to say no. And so it's not actually about how you receive change. It's actually about how we approach changes in a way that makes it possible for us to overcome our own natural resistance. And we're going to dive into that and the why in a moment. But first, we're going to get a little nerdy, and I love to get nerdy. So I hope that you'll nerd out with me and get really into this. But that does mean that there's a few complex words and theories that we're going to discuss. And my promise to you is that I'm going to make everything easy to understand, really applicable, and give lots of examples so that you can see how this plays out in your own experiences and how you can see your own behavior reflected in this as well. So let's jump right into our brains. To begin, we need to understand why people resist change, and we need to understand how we can create new strategies that helps us to overcome that resistance. I believe that there are 6 main reasons why change is hard at a neurological level. The first, we can automatically give ourselves a free pass because we can pretty much blame everything on the basal ganglia. And the basal ganglia is the part of the brain that houses repetitive and habitual task information. So our brain strives for efficiency, and the way that it does that is through using this area of the brain to actually minimize the amount of energy that the brain uses on day-to-day tasks. So if we think about something like our morning routine or our morning commute to work, there are times when we're in the middle of doing something, maybe that's showering, maybe that's driving to work or taking the subway or the train to work, and we kind of zone out and we're thinking a lot. And when we kind of come to, we're left thinking, what happened in the last 10 minutes? If you're showering, you may say, did I wash my hair today? Or if you're on the train, you might say, what stop are we at? I missed every stop that we're going past. And the reality is that that morning routine or that morning commute is hard-coded into your brain. And your brain knows that you know what to do. So it will reallocate that energy to other areas of the brain that need it. And most often what happens is that we have things to think about in the morning, right? We maybe had a weird dream. We have maybe a big day ahead of us. Maybe we had a disagreement with someone, or a spouse and had an argument. Those are things that we're thinking about. And your brain says, you don't need to focus on brushing your teeth or paying attention to signs. We'll put that on autopilot. Instead, let's focus on the deep thoughts that you're having, and let's reallocate that energy. So if we think about our day-to-day in terms of work, each of us has a routine that we're going to develop or have developed for being successful in our role and at our companies. And changes are going to disrupt that routine. So your brain's not going to be able to put you on autopilot if we're changing that routine. And your brain doesn't like that. So this is our very foundational basis for resistance as humans. Our brains do not like to have to use energy where they don't think they have to. So you want to keep naturally things in just repetitive and habitual tasks. But if we want to change, we have to engage the areas of the brain that use energy. And with that, we're going to find that change is really exhausting. So if we change from our habits and our repetitive tasks to a new way of working, we're going to have to think critically about what it is that we're doing. And in order to do that, we have to engage our prefrontal cortex. And most people have heard about the prefrontal cortex. It's right here in the front of the brain, but it's the center of the brain that houses the logical thought processing. So it also happens to use the most energy of the brain. So on the spectrum between the two, you've got your basal ganglia over here that uses the least amount, and you've got your prefrontal cortex over here that uses the most amount of energy. So this is really the reason that many of us feel tired after a day at a conference. So maybe yesterday you logged off after the conference and thought, wow, I'm really tired. The reality is we're sitting here, we're watching a screen, and we're taking in information. We didn't really do a whole lot. But while we're sitting and listening, our prefrontal cortex is in overdrive, taking in all of that information and creating new neural connections based on what you're hearing and what you know. And it's a lot of work for your brain to take in new information. But it's even more work when what you're being presented with, it contradicts what you already think you know. And that happens a lot in the learning process. That's really the basis of learning, right? Is breaking old beliefs and building new beliefs based on new information. And so if we think about the context of change and the context of work, pretty much everything has to be relearned. And oftentimes what we're being told to do will contradict what we believe or what our brain thinks we should do. So if we're on our way to change and we're really engaging that prefrontal cortex, something interesting is going to happen. We're going to start to wonder where that change came from. And oftentimes, especially in business, changes can feel like they're just kind of thrust upon us. And what happens is we then start to ask questions like, where did this come from? Who was involved? And why are we making this change? And this is painful because social exclusion activates our anterior cingulate, and that's an area of the brain that processes pain response. And what's really interesting is that this area of the brain processes all pain. So that's physical pain. So if you hurt yourself, it's processed here. It's also social exclusion and exclusionary pain. So things that aren't physical, it's still processed in the same way. And so what we're going to see is that if you start looking at this change and you don't see yourself reflected in it, or you say, you know what, our team wasn't involved, or my peers were involved, but I wasn't involved, that's going to cause you pain. And what happens is your brain is going to start to try to protect itself when it's faced with pain, regardless of that pain. So the way that it protects itself is through avoiding things. So your brain will tell you to avoid the cause of that pain. And this could mean really simple things to really broad things, like I'm just going to avoid that leader that didn't invite me to the meeting, all the way to I want to leave this company because I don't think they care about me and I want to avoid them. They're causing me pain. So you can see how this exclusion can really cause a lot of interesting things to happen within your brain. And it's really going to make it hard for you to change. Now, if we keep going on our change journey, we've made the we are dedicating ourselves to actually changing. We are now asking questions about where this came from. And the next thing we're going to say or going to look at is really, what comes next? We're going to ask a lot of questions about what's next in this change. And that's not great for us because in humans, limbo is not a good place for us to live in. We're not designed for ambiguity. It doesn't function well without knowing what to be focusing on. And so when your brain is forced to sit in that state of ambiguity, it goes into problem solving mode. It doesn't just sit there, it starts to problem solve. And your brain takes all that information that you know and all of your experiences, and it starts to piece together a story. And that story may or may not be true, but your brain is going to try to define it. So the interesting part is once you've exhausted all of your information, there's a desire then to seek out others' information, their knowledge, their feedback, their conclusions, and either add or compare to each other. And this really starts the rumor mill. This is where we start creating narratives that don't exist. We're building them, not the organization. And the reason this causes resistance is that oftentimes our brains will default to worst case scenario planning. This is an evolutionary trait for us to protect ourselves. And so we'll always go to the worst case scenario first rather than the best case scenario, which can create fear, which then activates your brain's protective measures, and then you avoid potential harm. So this is a really interesting one as well, because when you're in this state, your brain is once again going to try to avoid certain things that are going to cause it pain. And if we're at a point where we are defaulting to worst case scenario, we're activating those measures. So we're moving along our change journey, but many of us aren't going to be hit with just one change. We're going to be hit with 2, 3, 5, 10 changes at once, right? Lots of things change. And this goes all the way from personal life to business life and all the things in between. So we do have what I call an anxious amygdala. And your amygdala is the reptilian part of your brain. It's the really, really early functioning part of your brain that is basically there to keep you alive. And the problem with this area of the brain is that when you become overwhelmed with too much change or information, sometimes something happens called amygdala hijacking. And when this happens, your amygdala essentially has a switch that it could flip where it says, we are way too overwhelmed. We don't know what's going to happen next. There's way too much stress. We're shutting down all functioning except for what we need to stay alive. And that's your fight or flight response. And so it wants to conserve energy in your body in case you need to fight or flee. And where this becomes an issue is when we need people to go to make the change to their day-to-day tasks and they're doing something different, we need them to engage that prefrontal cortex. Now, it stands to reason that if amygdala hijacking occurs, the prefrontal cortex will be one of the first things to be completely shut down because of how much energy it uses. So this makes changing our routines nearly impossible. And it really makes changing the way that we work incredibly difficult. So if we continue on, there's one more thing that happens when we experience change. And it's something that we don't talk about a lot, but that is loss. And loss is really hard for our brain. It's hard because it's not something that we process well. And the brain will constantly try to protect itself. And loss is one of those things that throws a lot of red flags at our brain. So there are 3 types of loss that we typically experience in the business world. There's a loss of security or control, which is basically you feel like you don't have control in your job or there's a lack of support. The second is a loss of competence, which means that you previously might have been an expert or had really good knowledge of the way to do things, and you're losing that identity by losing that expertise because of a change. And the third is a loss of relationships or a sense of direction, where you just aren't sure where your place in the business world is. You're just not sure where you fit anymore, or your sense of belonging may have changed. And oftentimes we approach loss in business with a silver lining approach. And we've all seen that, we've all heard that, we've been taught that from a very young age, that the silver lining approach is really important. Look for that silver lining. While it seems like good advice, the brain doesn't process gains and losses in the same way. In fact, our brain actually processes and responds to loss significantly stronger than a reaction to a gain or a positive. So that means that the silver lining approach usually won't cut it in these situations. So when we think about those 6 and the 6 ways that we naturally resist, it can sound a little scary and maybe a little overwhelming as you start to think about what it's going to take for you to change. But this is where I think neuroscience is the most powerful, because we can use this information to make changing our ways easier for us and become change superstars in our organizations. And the best way to become a change superstar is through being able to self-diagnose your own resistance and understand what barrier you may be facing as you go about changing. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to build this skill set together today. And just like there are 6 reasons why we resist, there are also 6 ways that we can overcome our natural barriers and be more open to change. And the first couple are because we have created routines that are stored in our basal ganglia. Repetition is critical, and so is giving yourself time. So you've likely created those routines for yourself to make it easier to do your job, to make it easier to do your schoolwork. And the reality is that in order to replace those hard-coded routines, you need to repeat the new ways of working. Make sure that you're paying attention to the repetitive communications you're receiving and take in that information. The more times you're told that information, the easier it is to hard code it. And if you read the first email and ignore the rest, you're not allowing yourself that opportunity to hard code those messages. And as you think about an upcoming change, think about how repetition is important for you. Everything you have ever done was likely difficult the first time, and being asked to change is absolutely no different. So think about the change you're being asked to make and make sure that you're repeating the new ways of working or trying it over and over to get yourself used to what the new way of working will look like. And give yourself the opportunity and take opportunities to repeat these new tasks or these new ways of working. So take advantage of those moments when you're being offered training. Take advantage of those moments when you're able to join a lunch and learn, to see it again. Even if you've seen it already a couple times, allow yourself that repetition so it gets hard-coded. And this is why it's also equally important to give yourself time and ask for time from your leader to learn and understand the new way of working. It can be frustrating learning new things and getting the hang of new things and working with those new ways, but give yourself permission to adapt to the new change. Don't be too hard on yourself. If you're struggling at first, just remember you're reprogramming a part of your brain. That's a lot of work. So give yourself some grace in that moment to say, I need time to repeat this. I need to go and see this one more time. So if we're thinking about our self-diagnosis and you're presented with a change and you're feeling resistant, ask yourself, have I given myself time to adopt the change? Have I made several attempts to learn or adopt that change? If you haven't, that's probably why you're feeling resistance. Give yourself the time to repeat the new tasks or ways of working, and remember that you won't be perfect the first time you learn, right? Give yourself the opportunity to grow. The next is overcoming exclusion. And this is a little bit of a hard one for us as receivers of change, because you can't force people to include you and your perspective. But here are some ways that you can help yourself overcome that exclusion barrier. As you're being asked to change and you feel that kind of quick feeling of being left out or frustration because you don't feel seen or included, take a deep breath. Avoid that urge to assume bad intent. Most transformation journeys, most changes that I've seen and I've worked with, every single person that's working on those changes has nothing but good intent when they planned it. So assume positive intent from those who are building transformation strategies. However, I say that, but don't be afraid to ask questions about your specific situation. If you have a question or you're questioning something, it's really likely that at least one other person has the same question or the same situation. That feedback will help your leaders and your organizations continue to evolve and to include those different perspectives and situations. And this not only helps them for this change, it also helps them for future changes, because they're going to say, oh, remember, we forgot that group last time, and that's a really important group. We should make sure that we understand what this means for them next time. It's going to help create inclusion. So if you're presented with a change and you're feeling that resistance, ask yourself, am I feeling excluded? Or do you feel like your particular situation wasn't taken into consideration? If you are, try talking to someone within that change about your situation and how your situation might or might not fit in with the guidance that you've been given or the change itself. And remember that you're part of that path to inclusivity. So give yourself, that pat on the back to say, you know what, I recognize something. I'm feeling that there's exclusion here. Let me try to fix that. Let me try to bring this to their attention so that they can include me, so that they can include people in my situation. The next barrier to adoption that we have is around getting information. So as we discussed, when we don't get enough information, it's really natural for us to start problem solving and determining what that answer might be. But that doesn't help you move forward with the change, and it doesn't help others move forward with the change. So when you start to feel yourself going to that rumor mill or trying to piece things together and try to make that story about what's going on, take a moment to remind yourself that you're experiencing ambiguity, and that is why you are spiraling. It's all because your brain doesn't exactly know what to do. And that's okay. It's not easy for our brains, but it's okay to be in that space. So if you have questions, reach out to the source, whether that's a manager or a senior leader, and ask your questions. Resist that urge to ask friends and colleagues, because that's going to hurt you both, right? Neither of you probably has any more information than the other. And when you do that, you're going to start that rumor mill all over again. So if you're presented with a change and you're feeling that resistance, in this moment, ask yourself, am I feeling unsure of what to do next? Or I don't feel like I have enough information. If this is the case, it's time to connect with someone related to the change, or take your questions to that next leadership meeting, or even a meeting with your direct manager. Those individuals might not have those answers, but they might be able to help get it. So also remember that you're bringing something up that might be new to even the team that designed the change. So you'll have to be patient in case they're seeing this question for the first time and saying, we didn't think of that. We've got to figure out a solution here. Our next barrier is deeply rooted in fear, and that is the fear of being kind of the first to try something, or what I call being the first to the party. This can be really scary, but it can also be that defining moment for you as you show your change superpowers, right? This can be a moment for you to shine. The truth is that in the midst of change is when people have the biggest opportunity to impress leadership and set themselves up for future success. So people remember people who not only are willing to adopt change, but are willing to help others adopt change and are change advocates. So if you're presented with a change and you're feeling resistance, ask yourself, am I feeling like I'm afraid to be the first person to adopt the change and worried because I'm not seeing others adopt the change? If that's the case, share that concern with your leader, or partner up with a colleague or a peer and embrace the change together. It is always hard to be the first person to the party, but typically everyone else is also feeling really scared to be the first as well. So you're not alone. And finally, our final barrier is overcoming the fear of loss. So loss takes many shapes and forms in our business world, but it's important for you to be there for your colleagues and to offer an ear if they just need someone to talk through how they're feeling. Let them know that you're there. Let them know that you're part of their team. And if there's a way that you can help, please do. This not only helps you, it also helps the team. So if you're presented with a change and you're feeling resistance, ask yourself, am I scared of losing something? It's totally normal to be afraid of loss or even fearing the unknown. That's completely natural. This could be the opportunity to talk to your manager about that loss you're feeling or that fear you're feeling and make a plan together. As an example, if you're incredibly good at using a system or a way of working and you're really afraid that changing the way that you're working is going to really impact you and your productivity or your performance, have that conversation, and perhaps there's something like an external training or a workshop that you could go to that would help you gain that competence in the new way of working really quickly and help you get back to where you were. So these 6 ways of overcoming your natural resistance and diagnosing that resistance will help you to harness change and approach change positively and quickly. This change superpower will help differentiate you from your peers and make you stand out to leadership who will come to depend on you to help drive change and will quickly see you as an emerging leader because of the way that you're advocating for change. So while it's important to understand those natural barriers that we have to adopting change, what happens if none of those are true? What happens if you're actually not feeling natural resistance, but you're feeling active resistance, which is that you're making that choice that you don't want to do this? There are 3 steps you should go through in this case, and you need to realize that most active resistance comes from a place of fear and concern for the organization and from a good place. So you shouldn't be afraid of it. You should really embrace it in those moments, but embrace it in the right way. And there are 3 ways to do that. The first, you want to define your reasons for resisting. Reflect on the why. Second, you'll want to talk to a manager or a leader calmly and rationally about the facts of what concerns you or is stopping you from being on board with the change. There could be a misunderstanding or a misalignment that could easily be cleared up. And third, this is a hard one, work toward acceptance of the change by going through your steps to adopt and revisit our list of ways to overcome that natural resistance a lot, right? This is the hardest one, but sometimes changes are going to happen and you're going to, not be on board, and you're going to pose that to your leaders, and they're still going to say it's true, but we're going to move forward with this change. And we have to be there and ready to say, okay, I accept that. I will move forward with this change. So just remember, oh, and why is this important for your career? Sorry, I skipped my own section. This is important for your career because people who resist changes can be seen as difficult. People who resist changes can be seen as needing a lot of hand-holding or not being able to self-motivate. But people who are able to embrace change, drive change, and help others lead change, they're seen as advocates. They're seen as leaders. They're seen as people that can be depended on to help, people who are collaborative and want to help one another. That is how change superstars are seen in our organizations. So for your career, being a change superstar will help you to be seen as that leader, to help you embrace those leadership qualities that change gives you. And that's really important as you're going forth in your career. So harness that change superstar in you and really practice these methods of accepting change, taking on change, self-diagnosing your own resistance, and driving change forward. But just remember that this is a journey. Every change is a journey, and we all go on it every single day. So give yourself a little bit of grace in the fact that most of your resistance is completely natural, and work to overcome that resistance with the help of others, but also within yourself. So I want to thank you for giving me the time to share a little bit of neuroscience and neuropsychology with you, and I hope that it resonates with you as you move forward with your careers. And I wish you all the best of luck in your careers, and I appreciate your time. So now I think, Jose, time to open it up for some questions. And like I said, don't be shy.
That's right. That's right, Travis. Listen, I personally always love your presentations, a science-based approach to change and transformation, which is something that's affecting every one of us on a daily basis. We have just gone through globally and socially through tremendous changes and transformations, and we have seen transformations accelerate across all industries as a result, of course, of the first question that came up here, Travis, from Shmuel Yerushalmi, and he's asking about, COVID-19 and the transformations that have happened around the world. It's easy to see the negative impacts of all of that. But there's probably a silver lining somewhere there about people reflecting on their lives, reflecting on their journeys, and maybe some actually being more willing to change and being more proactive about changes in their lives. From a neuroscience perspective, I guess, when you have a trauma like that at a social level so large, what are kind of the byproducts of that transformation?
Yeah, so COVID-19 was a really interesting case study in neuroscience and change and transformation because we didn't have a chance to strategize it, right? It just happened and it was thrust upon us and we all had to adapt. So one of the things that I think is really important looking back at COVID, and especially the ways that it changed the way that we were working, was a lot of what we talked about today around that self-diagnosing, because we were all thrust into it and saying, looking at ourselves and saying, what is it that I'm worried about? Is it fear? Is it, is it the fact that I need to learn how to use Zoom? Is it the fact that, I lost my relationships in my workplace? What is it that's causing that resistance? Because everything about COVID sent all the red flags up in the brain, right? And so I think that was really an important look back. But COVID was probably, hopefully, a once in a lifetime experience in that way. But it really does happen on a daily basis when we think about mergers and acquisitions, we think about buyouts, we think about companies that changed strategy. We had a lot of them that did that after COVID. They completely changed what they were making or what they were building or how they were moving forward in the market. And so those types of changes are going to keep happening. And we just need to remember that neurologically, we're not built for it. So be ready for that discomfort and start to look at that discomfort and really lean into it, because it's going to tell you a lot about what you're feeling and what you need in that moment. And that's been the biggest lesson for me in the last 2 years even, has been lean into it and figure out what it is that you need in those moments. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, this is a great question. Another question. Thank you, everyone, for providing all these wonderful questions. We have questions here on the Q&A live. We have questions coming in for LinkedIn, so this is phenomenal. Keep that up. Another question has to do with not only embracing change, but what kind of person you have to be to lead change. And the perspective here is not just about adapting to what's going on, but really becoming proactive about changing the way things are. Is there are you born that way to become a leader for change? Or is this something that you can develop skills over time? Probably a little bit of nurture and nature. What does the science tell us about our ability, not just to embrace change, but really to be proactive and lead change?
Great question. So there's a scale, right? There's a spectrum of this. Some people are really high in their EQ, their emotional intelligence, and they can see what people need and they can sense what people need. And so some of the things we talked about today come really naturally to them because they're able to really embrace the empathy that change and leading change requires to actually lead people through change. Other people might not be as far along on that emotional intelligence scale, and that's okay. We need everyone from every spectrum, but it's going to take a little bit more for them to learn about these types of things and figure out how to embrace them. And a lot of that comes from experience. So, if you're not someone who naturally looks at that kind of empathy side of things, push yourself to be more empathetic and put yourself in other people's shoes, especially as they're being brought changes. And it's really great to do, especially at a level where maybe you're not leading change yet, right? It's really good to look at your peers and say, oh, how did this person react when they were asked to change? And how did that person react when they were asked to change? What did they need? What helped them? What would help them? And ask those questions, because that experience is going to teach you what it's going to take in the future. And you're going to notice someone and say, oh, that's just like that person that was brought change before. I know how to deal with this. I can help them with that. It's going to help build that leadership of change in you. So yes, great question again.
It's a wonderful insight, Travis. We have a question here, a very personal question from Daniela Galan, and she's asking, if you look at, she's thinking about doing somewhat of a self-evaluation, self-diagnosis, and she feels that she needs to come up with some new strategies to do things. But when you're coming up with those new strategies, it's a little scary because you're not sure if your new strategies are actually any good. And, what is the best way of maybe when you're trying to create change, what are some of the techniques perhaps to check or evaluate if your changes are moving in the right direction? Do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, so change is a hard one to measure sometimes, but I think it's really important to think about where are you trying to go? And I think a lot of times we really skip some of the upfront work when it comes to making change. And we just go, this is a change we want to make. This is what I think we need to do to get me to a place. We skip one little piece though before we get there. And that is to really look at what is going to happen if we make this change to get to this outcome that we're looking for. What does it look like today? And what does it look like tomorrow? And that's how you can start to measure that. But a lot of people jump right to solutioning how to make the changes to get to a particular outcome, but they don't think a lot about that moment of what is it that we're at now? What is it that we're going to see if we make the change effectively, and how to measure the in-between. So think about that. Think about where are we now? Where would we be if this change was made effectively? And that'll help you determine how to actually self-look at the numbers or the situation that you're going to go through when making that change. That'll help you measure a little bit more.
That's fantastic. We have time for one more that I'm going to squeeze in here, and specifically about the component that you talked about in the fear of loss. I have found that to be very, very strong component on resisting change. And I'll give you a very specific example. Let's say, you come up with a new health plan for the company and you make announcements about the new health plan. And the moment you do that, what you're going to highlight all the benefits of the new health plan. But immediately what people think when they receive the new brochure is like, okay, what have they taken away, right? And they haven't talked about, and that fear of loss, right? And the question is, what is the best way of communicating? Because a lot of times we have to communicate things like that. In change, you're going to lose some things to gain some other things. Is it best to face the loss on the communication up front and talk about the loss and then go into benefits? It's better to just kind of gloss over the loss and go into benefits right away. What have you found to be the best strategies for communication when you do have loss and gains?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think this all comes down to honesty and trust. Because if your people trust you, if your employees trust you, if your peers trust you, when you're making decisions like that, and you're totally right, Jose, sometimes you lose a little to gain a lot, and sometimes you lose a lot to gain a little, right? But these are changes that have to be made. But if you are honest and upfront about them, it's a lot easier for people to take that. So I say always go with, and we do this a lot, where we'll say, okay, it's open enrollment time. Here we're highlighting all the changes, good, bad, or otherwise. And we're saying, you know, these are the things that we know have some impact. And a lot of times we've answered some of those questions already. So as an example, maybe the fee is going up a little bit, but maybe our solution is that, you know what, we're going to give you all a small stipend. We'll cover 50% of that change because we had to do it out of, you know, our contracts and we had no choice, you know. Or maybe you're going to lose, you know, you're only going to get 2 dental cleanings instead of 3 dental cleanings a year or something like that. And maybe it's here's an option though for you. If you want to have that 3, we can add that on. So starting to really be upfront and honest, but also answer the questions that you know people are going to have. If it's a bad thing, you already know how they're going to feel. So start to create that narrative for them and help them see the path through it. Great questions. Thank you so much for those questions.
Love that. Listen, we are out of time. We could be asking you questions all day long. This is a fascinating topic, and you're a wonderful collaborative leader who I know cares deeply about Latin professionals. We've talked about your trips to Brazil and Latin America, and your job as a change leader at Google, one of the most transformative companies in the world. You live and you work through your purpose on a daily basis, and that comes through your passion and your purpose are clearly aligned, and the service that you provide to the world and to our Latin community today is invaluable. So thank you so much for your collaborative leadership and for sharing so generously with all of us today.
Thank you so much, Jose, and thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the opportunity.
Ladies and gentlemen, Travis Heller here with us, change leader at Google, change leader at the Nomad, and it's just an incredible leader, a collaborative leader, supporting Latin professionals around the world as well. We're going to be taking a break here. When we come back, we're going to be coming back with a wonderful panel that will be focusing on smart cities and emerging global jobs and careers, industry adoption of emerging and exponential technologies that are affecting the way we work and the way we live. So we have a tremendous panel joining us after the break. So take a break now, and we'll see you back at the top of the hour. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Future for Latins conference by Dream to Succeed. This is where great Latin leaders, professionals, and students meet collaborative leadership development, smart technologies, growth, and culture. My name is Jose Perez. I'm the CEO of Global Excellence and Innovation, and I am honored to be here for this two-day event focused on professional development for Latins around the globe. A reminder for everyone logging in, this event is being translated simultaneously to English and Spanish, and you can select your preferred language in the interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen. Now, I'm very excited about this next panel. We're going to be talking about smart cities and emerging global jobs, industry adoption, and emerging technologies. And our moderator is our CEO and founder, Sarah Nunes. Sarah is the Director of Future of Sales at Honeywell. She's a dynamic, award-winning global organizational portfolio management professional and advisor to the C-suite. She's a thought leader with a global and multicultural expertise across a broad range of industries, including telecommunications, technology, finance, and education. Sarah has a profound belief in giving back, and that what led her to create Dream to Succeed, Soñar es Crecer Foundation. Sarah, it's an honor to be here with you. It's a privilege to sit and learn with this tremendous panel on emerging technologies. Thanks for your collaborative leadership.
Thank you, Jose, and thank you so much for making this event a real success. Everybody's sending me text messages and excited about what we're doing today. But, before I start, thank you. I think working for Honeywell is a privilege. It's one of the largest organizations that really are leading the path for transformation, creating great solutions. And just to give you an idea of what we're representing today when we talk about smart cities, we're talking about pieces of solutions that are coming together. And when we said Internet of Things, when we said smart cities, we're talking about real technology. So alarm systems, you have sensors everywhere, you have models, you have every piece that you can ever imagine that really make that Internet of Things or smart city happening. There is more than 150 million houses that may have one of our products. There's more than 10 million buildings and infrastructure globally that may have our solutions. And Honeywell is accelerating a smart cities implementation. This event or this segment is going to be in Spanish. So I'm going to switch to the Spanish language at this time. So please click on your preference language interpretation in the bottom of the screen. Pick your own language and you will be able to see the translation going forward. Voy a presentar a nuestros panelistas y es un honor.
I'm going to present our panelists. It's an honor to have Sergio González with us. He is the Vice President and General Manager representing Latin America in general. And for me, it is an honor that he's here with us, ready to share a bit of his history and his knowledge of this really important issue. We also have here two other people that are really important for me in Honeywell, and we work really close together in this transformation project. We have Caterina Lopez, and she takes all of these solutions and brings them to the hands of all of the creators and the solutions for the different buildings. And also Inés is with us. Inés Olano. She is our leader in human resources. Thank you, Inés. She is building a team of dreamers, a team of people who look at the future and are designing it at Honeywell. And we want to talk about how can we work together for this incredible company. So please, I invite you all to have a discussion about who we are, what do we dream about, how did we arrive to the success of working for Honeywell. So let's start with Sergio. Sergio, I would love for you to talk about yourself, your history, and how did we arrive to this incredible success? Hi, Sarah. Thank you for inviting me today and share something that for us is really interesting. And we feel a lot of passion about it. I have more than 20 years of experience working for companies that are really similar with the intention of what we do every day has a purpose for us. It is personal, but also for what we leave behind. And especially when we put it in the work frame of Dream to Succeed is for the Latin community. So I feel really honored to be here. Thank you, Sergio. And Caterina Lopez, you were really close with your team, and we are implementing smart solutions in Latin America. I would love to hear about you. Catherine, please share a bit about your story. Thank you, Sara. I'm really happy to be here. Definitely, I can say that I am from Colombia, and I've always been an activist. I studied in a place where you couldn't find that many women. That was electrical engineering. And I've always tried to open the way for other women. I have a small kid. He is 9 years old. And I always look at him and I look at the dreams that I've achieved. I feel happy. I feel I'm just honored to work for Honeywell, and I'm happy to be a mother and a wife. Thank you, Catherine. Inés, please tell us about yourself. I have the privilege to chat with you in another event, and I love that we are doing a lot to bring Latin Americans to us. So talk about you, please. Thank you. I am really excited to be here with all of you. I have more than 25 years of experience in human resources in Latin America and Asia. I feel really passionate about young people being their first option to build a future that is better for themselves. And I also am activist of the feminism. So I try to work with women so they arrive to positions of power in Colombia and Latin America. Thank you, Nes. So let's start our conversation. We want to know more about these smart cities. So for me, the technology is a theme that I feel a lot of passion about it. I love to have a computer in front of me. I felt that when I was a little kid, and I wanted to show it to everyone. It was like an Apple computer. It was really small. And from that point onwards, to see the privilege, how we have transformed all of these technological solutions when we talk about computers, how it has aged, how it is now arriving to being a smart in data and everything, I feel a lot of passion about it. And I know a lot of you feel passionate about technology. So you that have the vision of what Honeywell is doing globally and these tendencies with the smart cities, please give us an example. How can we actually see them? Of course, I would love to start precisely on why is it important. And you just need to look at the different corporations and nations in the last years about sustainability. And I think that even though we have been talking about for many years, today it has a protagonic role. And we realize as human race that we need to have a good life quality to sustain our populations that are growing, but it has to be sustainable, especially for the future. So here we can show some of the points that are really important for that human behavior that we need to follow. And as we said, with all of the change, as Travis said, we are going to see this in what we are going to touch now. We can see that 55% of the global population is living in cities or urban areas. And this type of urban sectors generate a series of problems in the status quo of how we live in the space. So maybe we don't have enough water, or we see a high emission of CO2, and all of those things that we use in our daily lives to support ourselves have these second effects. And that's why we have issues with energy. So one of the important points for Honeywell is to think, how can we actually work about the reality, right? We don't have to say, hey, we have to get away with cities. It's not where we are going. So this is what is coming. From that point onwards, we consider that in the concept of smart cities is just one of the many elements that we have to start using to meet this need. So what happens when the society is more consciously aware?
We need more tools because although there's more an increasing the conscience, personal conscience, we need to accelerate this process. And how do we do that? We should focus on monitoring how to identify where we have these energy leaks, how the problems that cause these secondary effects that we didn't anticipate or that we don't want, where are they coming from? And so the solution we're offering uses IoT, using the technology we have, first with sensors, because we need to know what's going on. That's the first thing. So we need sensors. Today, all of us have sensors in our houses, right? From the computer you were talking about, today maybe we have other devices to turn the lights on and off. Maybe we have air conditioning, and we use a smart device to control it, or even the vacuum cleaner we use. All these devices are sensors. So I'm trying to talk about us individually, right? But as we open the scope, when we think about a building, a series of buildings, and when we think of cities, we are also talking about waste, right? How to manage waste. How can we improve the way we manage waste, the routes to evacuate waste, to get them to the final disposal, how to use the public transportation system, for example. All these things, as they are measurable, and if they fall under the same general view, that means that I can modify certain variables, understanding the implications of that. So if I see that there's traffic somewhere that's going to impact waste collection, sensors give me that information and I can modify the delivery of waste, for example. What else do we obtain? We save energy, and so life becomes less expensive. If we can manage lighting, thinking that we don't need a specific light on, maybe I can turn it off remotely and automatically. How do I control HVAC systems that use lots of energy, or for the use of water, gas, waste, management, etc.? Also, how to manage incidents, because things are going to happen, things that we don't expect. A fire, for example. So with sensors for early detection of fires, for example, we can solve these issues faster if everything is centralized. And there are other issues like zero emissions and other goals that are part of the life we are living today in these urban spaces. And so the solutions created by Honeywell are helping solve some of these issues or at least they help manage that to answer to these needs we have. So maybe my colleague can tell you a little more about some success stories and cases that now we want to implement in Latin America. Catherine. Yes, thank you, Sergio. So here we have two examples from India. We started working there in 2017 with a command and control center to control traffic, environment sensors, the city's Wi-Fi. We developed smart signs and surveillance. It was very efficient in fine collection, for example. The income of the system went up 300%. And here you can see that we saw a decrease in pickpocketing and robberies in general, 33 and 36%. We all know that India has too much population, so the effect of this implementation helps improve the quality of life of
construyendo un hogar y haciendo parte de lo mismo. El último proyecto es
and the latest project in Egypt, in the city of Cairo, it's still being implemented. It's similar to the other two because we control all the systems that
impactando la velocidad de respuesta frente a emergencias, por ejemplo, los accidentes. Una vida depende de que una ambulancia llegue un minuto antes de lo que pudiera llegar.
to be there earlier if there's no chaos in traffic. We change how the street lights change to control and help having a better quality of life in smart cities. I would like now to give the floor to Inés so she can tell you a little more about other topics. But first, I would like to talk about sustainability. I'm in charge of the strategy and the technology Honeywell uses in their new projects. Our goal is to make that usable here in Latin America, and that's why I need to be aware of what's going on. And so Honeywell has been able to anticipate potential disasters because we have been responsible in how we manage water, how we the pollution we produce, the air pollution. More than 40% of this of CO2 emissions is caused by buildings. And that's why Honeywell has installed capacity in various buildings for automation. And so we can capture everything you see here. The sensors capture all energy consumption. It's measured and it's stored in a database so we can make better decisions. And by doing so, we can reduce energy consumption, and that has a positive impact on the environment. We can also reduce the need for maintenance in the infrastructure base of a city. And so that infrastructure is more efficient and less costly. And mobility is also smarter and more efficient. And I would like to finish by inviting you all to become part of the solution. I wouldn't like for us to conclude tomorrow that even though we knew we could do a lot for our environment, that there was so much we could do to give a better world to the next generations, we didn't. I don't want us to be considered the generation that knew what was going on but didn't care or didn't do anything. Companies like Honeywell are working ongoingly to do something good for people. Well, and after that inspiring message from Gadi, and a general view of what we're doing to make the world better, I like to talk about talent now. Remembering what Travis was saying, I loved his presentation. I can say that the only constant is change. And based on what we're experiencing right now, and based in my experience in talent, I've been researching the current trends related to talent, about that, and digital skills, how technology is there to help us work more systemically. And lastly, this is information from the World Economic Forum. They mapped the 10 skills for the future. We are talking about 2025. It's just a couple of years away. There are some skills related to problem solving that we need to develop. Others have to do with self-leadership. A third group is related to work with others, and the fourth, technology. So the blue ones are related to problem solving. We are talking about analytical thinking and innovation, complex problem solving, creativity, originality, and initiative, critical thinking and analysis. So this needs to be part of our agenda for the future, and also leadership related to the ability to learn. We are measuring what people can do and how much they can learn, be able to tolerate stress and be flexible. Leadership and social influence, because we need leaders that produce an impact in society, and technology, of course. I think more schools are aware now that teaching kids to program is good for the future. So technology is becoming more important in education. And that's what I wanted to tell you about. This gives you an overview of our work for the future. And I'm very excited about this because I feel this way we're connected what the world needs to what we can offer as people and with our talent to actually build a better world. Thank you so much, Ines. That was very interesting. I have two questions. One for Sergio as a company leader. I think we have around 4,400 employees here in this business area. So what are your expectations? Let's talk to these leaders for the future. We have invited about 10,000 students. They will listen to you. So please tell them what they can do. Well, thank you for that question. What they can do is whatever they want to do. I think the evolution, this is the best moment in human evolution because technology is highly developed, things are moving fast. And I think many of the things Ines mentioned have to do with this, the pressure on us to keep up the speed with all these changes. So I think that being open to change, being used for things to change, to become agents of change, try not to resist change. I think that will be the key for success in your future career. If we talk about smart cities, connecting that to what Ines was saying in your question, the question is, how do we change the blackboard? What do we need now? And I think we would need to change that for the next 10 years and maybe even faster than that. So we need to be agile and flexible, to be redrawing everything and reusing technology in various ways. Technology is not the solution. It's a tool. But if the person behind technology making decisions, analyzing data, and not worrying about databases, I think older generations had to work a lot on building that overview. I think society today and future talent has the ability to modify the landscape faster and not just data analysis. So I think analyzing to act is where they need to focus, right? So we're talking about how knowledge can help us reinvent ourselves, that we need to want to learn more and transform, not just, work with what we're being taught. We need to be active and move. And talking about the same issue, I think as consumers and human beings, the idea is how can we get ready for these technological changes that have a positive impact, right? Because we can have access to health, we have increased safety. I remember that when we started working in this transformation process at Honeywell, we were implementing solutions to know if the air around us was clean. And so we were so worried about it. So how can we as people get ready to use these solutions that are available for us?
I think that process of preparation starts with being open. And it starts with the biggest insight that you can have for the future. As I said, sometimes I tell them that in the mentoring sessions, they say, I don't know how to approach this later. I don't know how, I don't know them. And you need to be friend of your friend before you need them. You cannot wait for the situation to be there to react. I need you to help me. That's why I'm here, right? That's the example of relationships. And it's the same with what you're asking. How can we prepare ourselves? We have to start today. Maybe there are 10 different ways, and 8 of them, maybe I won't ask for help. But we have to be clever in this. We don't need to overwhelm ourselves, right? But there is a concept that today we are planning. So if this happens, I'm going to do this and that. But there is another concept that you are planning because of different scenarios. So you have assumptions, right? But 5 of these things can happen. What is common to them that we can prepare? And which ones are particular that I can have full? So it is complex. Yes, it is a complex scenario, but answering your question, how can I prepare myself? I have to consider that things are not going to be as I am planning them. So how can I plan myself for different scenarios? Thank you, Sergio. And Kathy, I wanted to talk about, it is difficult, when you see these issues of digital transformation and technology that maybe wasn't that easy for us to understand when we were at school or studying. So how has it been for you to accept this and use it as a platform to grow? Because maybe our audience feel a bit, without that much confidence, like thinking, I cannot go to that work because maybe I don't qualify, and they feel a bit of fear. How has it been for you? Especially in those situations that take us away from the success. Thank you, Sarah. It is a process. There is not a formula. But I've always told myself, how do you learn to swim? Swimming. You have to enter the water. And when I say it is a process, it is a lot of things. I studied, I prepared myself, but I also need that internal strength and believe in myself so I can achieve it. Personally, I've arrived to many barriers in my career. 20 years ago, when I started to study, there weren't so many women in technology, and there were a lot of difficulties. They thought, woman at home, women, psychology, and I wasn't doing that. So that taught me to be a lot more stronger. You can dream, and it's worthwhile to follow your dreams. Nobody else is going to do it for you. Only you can do that. We have people like Sergio, like Ines, like you, that I part of that push that we need to be able to say, you know what? Yes, of course I can. I'm not going to stop doing this. It's not going to be something I cannot do, that I cannot wear. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to keep pushing forward. Is that drive, Sarah? Is that self-love too? That gives you that confidence with the different challenges. If it's not you, it's another person. You have to say, why can it not be me? Oh, yes, I think the same. Thank you for telling us your experience. Ines, we work for an incredible company. I am so proud of being part of Honeywell and work with all of you. It has been a privilege to work with you all. You really do support diversity. We are a company that gives equal opportunity to everyone. It is incredible. Go everywhere in the world, we can get to know each other, and we feel like human. We feel like we are always hugging each other. So let's talk about how Honeywell has arrived to that point where they open their arms to everyone who is able to believe in themselves and say, I want to work with you. I think that's the magic of this company. But it doesn't matter where this person is. You talk to them, and they behave, and they have some values and some characteristics that we all share. We really are future builders because we are building the future. So I think that the invitation for everyone is to be part of this. We have all of our job positions open so you can watch them and see which one you are interested in. And we have a lot of opportunities also to get to know the company from other points of view. From the academy, you can come in and study a bit of us. You can follow us through social media. We love diversity. We were awarded 2 awards that we love. We are one of the best companies for women and for millennials. So we are really focusing ourselves in attracting young people so we can challenge the status quo. And the last thing I want to share is that last month we were in Forbes magazine, and we got granted the award of the best company in Mexico. So please come to us with that curious mind, with hunger to learn, to be able to transform the world, because that's what we are doing. We build a better future and make the world a better place to live in. That was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with everyone. And I would love to bring back Jose to see all of the questions of our audience. We're going to try to do it with the 2 languages.
We welcome you to the stage.
What a wonderful discussion from everybody here in this panel. And we have great questions coming in from the audience that I will share with you. And Sarah, you will, and our translator will be busy going back and forth with you and I. Now, the first question here comes from Shimuel Irashwami, and he is talking about this concept of smart cities and new technologies. And there is a concern about there's the benefit of new technologies, that many will benefit from these emerging technologies. But there is a concern that these emerging technologies are going to destroy current labor opportunities. And And the question is, how do you see the implementation of this exponential technology, especially in Latin America, where you may not have the qualified professionals to take over in these new technologies? The impact on employment and labor in general, how do you think society is going to make adjustments for that?
Me encanta esa pregunta y la voy a hacer en español.
I love that question, and I'm going to speak in Spanish so everyone can answer in whichever language you want. The beautiful thing is that the automation, for instance, is going to impact especially our community that has a work in this area. But I am sure that the new tendencies as smart cities are also creating new openings, new jobs, and there are new opportunities in Latin America. Yes, Sarah, I agree. If we go back and we see this effect, it's the same thing that happens with whichever technological advancement. So it could be something really specific, but I think it's a great example. When we talk about the industry of a taxi, for instance, and we have now Uber, Cabify, and so on. The role is changing. Now, it's not that difficult, right? It's not the skill what is changing the scenario, but the experience changes because of benefits, security, and so on. So what Sarah is saying here is, yes, there is a modification that is quite bigger. It's not the same. But we are opening to other things. And it's not going to happen from one day to the next. That's also important. So it's the type of things that we have to prepare for. There's going to be a change. And if I think about Latin America, there are things that are going to keep being the same. Not all of the cities. We have 6 mega cities. Not all of the cities are going to be there or in 10 years, right? But I think that what is important here is the normal way of the markets of moving. Some are quicker, especially if we compare with the past. We have to be looking, but we create different values. And we see what is not existent anymore or will stop being there. We can see that societies and the structures are moving us to that place. Everything is going to change around us. Yes, and we need more opportunities than ever before, because this is going to open, especially for the students of engineering. I think that they really are going to be those leaders to bring about this transformation. Excellent. Jose, next question.
Is there any other?
It helps if I unmute myself. Very good insights. Thank you for that. The next question is more on the optimistic side and more about what can we do to be part of this new trend and this direction. And the question comes from Luis Sepulveda, who is asking specifically when it comes to smart cities. If you could share, if the panel could share some resources, books, references for those who want to learn more, if there are some best references that are available that you could share with the audience.
¿Cuáles serían las referencias o material?
The references or maybe investigation material that we can share with the audience about smart cities. If you go to Honeywell, you will find there in our site a lot of references about smart cities. In what I've seen, and if you surf the web, you are going to find everything that you want and even more. And the most important part that I think from the beginning, we are not the only ones, but what you can find in Honeywell, you will find many places where you can move forward. So we had some examples about video oversight and so on, but it could be as big as you want it to be. Everything that happens in a city is too much, right? So the incredible thing of having this broad umbrella that is built to connect everything. So there's a lot of ways that we can follow in this umbrella.
Jose, I'm just going to conclude with the last question to the panel here. And es la última pregunta al panel hoy es, hablábamos ayer que era necesario...
The last question for our panel has to do with something we talked about yesterday. We talked about the need of having information or knowledge because that keeps the fire burning. Secondly, we talked about hope. Hope that we have an opportunity to keep moving forward. And thirdly, it was action. We were telling people they needed to act, that they needed to follow that path to success. So what would be your advice for them to be part of the solution and part of this future? I can start if you like. Sure. So I think they need to have a curious mind. They need to be interested in learn more, in listening, researching, having their ears and eyes open to anticipate what's coming, and also be resilient, because sometimes they will be frustrated because we learned something and then it changed. So we need to be alert and open to see these new opportunities. And engineering is one of the most demanded careers. So I think you will be stuck and realize you have been able to solve other challenges before. This is the same. It might take longer or not, but if you trust yourself and if you trust what you've built, you always have the choice, as Catherine was saying, for what comes in the future. Maybe it's not going to happen at the exact moment you want it to happen, but you can change it if you put your mind to it. Thank you so much, Sergio, Caterine, and Inés. It's such an honor to share this hour with you and activate our participants, and we'll be waiting for them here at Honeywell. Thank you so much, everybody.
Wonderful conversation, wonderful discussion on smart cities, on technologies, on skills necessary to be part of this new economy. We're going to wrap up this panel now, and we're going to set up the next session. And the next session is going to start at the top of the hour. We're going to be discussing the future of work in cybersecurity. And we're going to bring you a global leader in cybersecurity, Kevin Garvey, who will talk to us about the opportunities and the trends in cybersecurity. And also, very important, during the next segment, we'll have another raffle for scholarships. So for those of you, segment. So for now, take a break. Thank you, everybody, for being here with us. We'll be back with you at the top of the hour.
Thank you.
Thank you.